Good morning. This morning I'm talking about the importance of having a philosophy. Now I use the word philosophy because besides being a metaphysical minister, I'm also a psychic life consultant, and I have done for many years psychic tarot card readings. What I began to discover with the younger group of people, because you can tell by my hair, I'm in the older group now, that when they would come in and I'd start talking about their spiritual journey, they would look at me blankly. It was like they didn't understand this word at all. So I began to change the word for them to philosophy. I would say, talk about their philosophy that they would have. They seemed to understand the word philosophy. So that helped. But I began to realize as the years went by, more and more I was needing to address the word philosophy instead of spiritual. Now, to understand my journey, I definitely was sent to Sunday school fairly early, but as I wasn't present in my body at the time, it not much took, except as I got older, I truly wanted to know and understand God, or the word God, or what God meant, or who, just anything of what it was. And that really put me on my journey to a large degree, my own personal journey. So you may ask yourself, what is my philosophy of life? What is my belief about this life, other lives, this planet, other planets, and dimensions? And who are we really? Now, in some of my spiritual growth, we talked about being a soul having an earthly experience. And another thing to consider is, do you believe there is an energy for you? You may believe God, Mother Earth, Buddha, Jehovah, Muhammad, great teachers, great understanding in all sorts of ways. And even though many times we see their teachings have been taken and utilized in a different way, but at least there is a belief in something. There's something beyond yourself. And having a belief ensures that you do not feel alone in a crisis. You've got something to draw upon. And especially if you work to understand and connect to this force, whichever it is you believe in, then you can utilize the knowing to support you in becoming more of who you truly are. And that's what I found was very helpful as my years went on. And when I go back to the question, like, what is my philosophy of life? What it was when I was younger is quite different than what I am now, because I've spent my life working at understanding how the process of life is and what it is all about. What is this journey each one of us is on? Some take, you might say, one road or the other. I have friends who, several friends who have I need to just go back to a beginning of that. I have several friends I have met on my journey who travel in some ways a different path than me, but we all have the same awareness that we understand that there is a force, or there is a power, or there is an understanding. And so we're all working, as some people say, there are many roads to the top of the mountain. We're all traveling our own road. My road often has left me out in the, you might say, the far side, saying certain things that most people don't believe at all. And yet through my experience, it has become real for me. These experiences that we have quite often, and especially now, I find people will email me in particular, asking a question about an experience they may have had so that I can answer. And the fascinating thing for me is several of my younger family members, great nieces and nephews and great nieces and nephews, are emailing me when they have different experiences and they're not sure. So I think the key is, my son says, well, I guess, Mom, when something goes on, they just call Auntie Norma. And I went, right. Well, they don't, because we live in a different country. I live in a different country than they are. The emails make it much easier, or mostly it's through messaging, thank goodness. So the connections that we have, it's like we live in this planet where we know, if we listen to the scientists, there are all these magnetic fields, and now the internet has repeated that. That's basically what happens is we often will repeat what is alive in nature and make something happen in more of our material way. And so we are connected to any pretty well space on the earth, through the beautiful satellites in the sky and everything else. But really, when we look at our philosophy, it's our belief in what is real for ourselves. Now, we have different experiences. I grew up in a family where there were talk of psychic phenomena was not uncommon, basically because I had a grandmother that did healings, even though she had died long, long, long before I came along. But the stories were there: healing of headaches, automatic writing. My mother did something similar that she had learned through a spiritualist church at one time, of how to do something similar to what Ouija boards are, which I do not recommend for people just to pick up and do. It's not one of the things I totally recommend you begin with. But it does show that there is something there. There is something beyond us, beyond what we can see, feel, and touch it. But the awareness that there is there. So when I began my journey, which, as I have said many times, began with the tarot and is still my biggest tool and is still being the basis of understanding a workable philosophy. You don't want to have a philosophy that is so, you might say, ultralistic, that's not practical. You need a philosophy that has you work and understand in your life, so when an issue comes up, you've got something to draw on, something that has your back, something where you feel, well, no matter what, we'll get through this, or it'll give support and it'll give an understanding. That philosophy, whatever you may call it, is what we kind of need at times in our lives. To think you're going to go through a whole life and not have some time when you feel that you're going to need something to sort of bolster you up. This happens mostly often when people die. In fact, I just got an email this morning. A client of mine that had an appointment this afternoon just said, unfortunately, her daughter-in-law had unexpectedly, and she has her son and her granddaughter with her, and she was going to cancel the appointment. Of course, she was going to cancel the appointment. Because, and I just email message back saying, anything I can do to help, let me know. But you've got my, the support that we need from our people around us. But I know for myself, I've had to draw on my own inner knowing and my own inner belief systems. That is my philosophy. And can I say my philosophy in 2 or 3 words? No, it's probably much bigger than that. But it is about understanding how we are much bigger in so many ways than what we think. Now, a lot of that came through my reincarnation work. Now, I'm just going to explain something here. I was a tarot reader for a metaphysical bookstore for a number of years. And during that time, they brought in speakers. It's an astrological bookstore, but they brought in not only astrological teachers, but other teachers. And first one that came in on the reincarnation scale was Marcia Moore, who wrote a book called Hypersentience, which was very much like the hypnosis technique. Then they brought in a gentleman from Colorado called Brian Jameson, who wrote a very basic little book called Explore Your Past Lives, using a very, very, you might say, mechanical technique that I find can still work when a person is very, very much in their head. But through that reincarnation work, it added to what I had been learning philosophically through my tarot studies. And so I had 2 things you might say mend. It's like 2 rivers that come together and join. Have you ever watched that happen when 2 major rivers come, and one may a bit muddier than the other, and they come in, and then all of a sudden there's just one river moving on ahead, and the colors have evened out. And I've been privileged to see that happen several times in different places in the world. And it just shows when you're adding philosophies, when you add, it's like people who cook, not me, but many people cook, and they add things, they add different spices, they add different things. And a new taste will come out, a new awareness, a new belief, a new attitude. Now, as my life went on also, excuse me, I went to more into my transformational work because I saw how important it was to clear the blocks. And reincarnation, again, the past life regression technique began a lot of that. My inner child process that I was literally given over 2 days also added to that, which I now talk about having frozen memories. And so the understanding of how you might say all these things came together, my philosophy is just so different from what I originally learned when I went to Sunday school, which really wasn't much, or my initial inquiries as to what this word God meant. So today when I just kind of got a little sidetracked there. So what I found was as I went along, I began to be able to utilize my abilities to reach back to in relation to the soul. My interest in a person's soul became, you might say, larger than life in a way. I was curious as to what are these souls when they first come to this planet, because there seemed to be a lot of talk around like we chose to be here, that we choose our parents, that we choose different things, and that we, everything was delightful and nice and neat. And I wasn't finding that. I wasn't finding that was always the truth. I began to find that people came to this planet through various ways. Often they were sent here. And then this began to give me a concept of how come in certain places, like in England, when the prisons were full. So what they did was they sent people off to the US and especially to Australia, and like transported them supposedly for 7 years, but most people never returned to England. So it was kind of being banishment. And then I began to find people are being banished here, and I'll come back as to why that is. And then I realized no thought is original. Somewhere or other, someone has thought about it. So somebody knew, oh, okay, let's ship them off here. But that was already being done on a soul level. Now, why Earth? Why would we come to this place? That is because this is my belief. Just let you know that. I never read this. I just came to this conclusion. And I'm sure it's been written somewhere else, because I know if I've come to the conclusion, so have many others. This is an emotional planet. Now, I've had the privilege now of visiting a lot of different planets and seeing a lot of different ways that people live in different places. Not like us, but in the energies of whatever. And this one is emotional, and it has about it this whole element of this word we call love, and the feeling of love, which I believe is really, really important, and to unite with this. But we come here to this emotional planet, and most planets that I've seen are more on a mental level, more in a kind of thinking, mental. A lot of people it's all about thought. And then they come here where the basis is really run on the emotions, and most people don't know how to handle them. They don't know how to experience love. They don't know how to feel love. So they have lifetime after lifetime after lifetime of not really doing well. And then one day they wake up. And it's that waking up process that we begin to have a philosophy of life here. And as we begin to wake up as a soul of going, oh, there's these things called feelings, or they're often depressed and miserable, and it's kind of like an awareness, like this isn't the way to live. This is not the way to be. And so they begin to take a different viewpoint. And a lot of it is about recognizing that our bodies are connected to this earth. We are in bodies here, and they are connected to this planet. And therefore, the planet talks to us in a way through emotion. So we learn how to balance the emotions and the mental together so that we can experience. And out of that, people develop philosophies. They learn that if they do this, it doesn't work. If it does that, it does work. And how to put those together. So as time goes by, you have whole lots of different experiences, maybe many, many, many lifetimes, maybe not so many. And then you have psychic and intuitive ones, where you begin to realize that there are more and more answers and more realizations to learn and to come and understand, and how to apply that to your life. That becomes what's known as a philosophy. Often we find that our own philosophies don't work. So there we will often look to the larger, you might say more publicized ways of looking at things. We may join groups because there's something about community that has us feel loved and wanted and important too. We need to feel important in our own way. Person like myself who basically left her own family behind and had to create through people, even though I had a husband and children, it was like it is not the same as having a close family where you can really rely on them and use the support. I come from a big family, a really big family. Not so much my own family, it was only 4 of us, but they were divided into 2 lots. 2 older sisters who had many children, and 2 of us that were younger. And then I left New Zealand at 18 to come here to Canada. So I had to create community. I had to create people around me. And I was very, very busy in my 30s and 40s and working and raising children and things. But I began always to keep my philosophy together. Oh, I got sidetracked at times and did crazy things. But that's part of life. You can't be in a little box, I don't think, to really understand. And one of the early, and I've probably said this before in a talk, one of my earliest teacher said to me when I was 22 with 2 little kids, you will be a very good reader because of your life's experiences. And I totally thought he was crazy. Another teacher I thought was crazy. And that was the first one. And I thought, I'm 22 with 2 little kids. What's experiences? Well, I've had a lot of different experiences in many, many different ways. And it has helped me when people come to me and I am able to, they tell me what's going on and I'll go, I understand because I've either been there or been very close to the situation and understood it. Also, because I've done a lot of past life looking to clear out some of what I call my personal blocks and attitudes and judgments I had, I also understand many, many things that way. So it is tremendous how you can get experiences, how you can come to see how you were if you're doing reincarnation work, and which I always recommend past life regressions to be able to do that, so that you can see. And it's really, by the way, past life regression, the technique I use is like a meditation, a little visualization, and it works so well because you can isolate the regrets and the guilt that you've carried from other lifetimes into this one. So you can clear those things. I'm really big on being clear. That doesn't mean I'm perfect. No, it just means feel that it is super important to clear out whatever you're stuck on, whatever those beliefs that are really stuck. So philosophy, are they stuck ideas? No. It's a general belief in an energy that is bigger than you, that is more than you, that is there for you. I don't, how do I say this? When I did a talk a few weeks ago where I talked about connecting to the love force and bringing it inside. And I did have some comments about people who hadn't thought of that. And I remember in that talk, I was talking about the first time I really made contact to that love force, where I really felt that love force. And it was out like reaching outside, which is fine. But I knew I had to have it inside. I knew it had to be in there, right inside. And then it became so much more clear to me that in order to hold on to that, I had to clear out any part of me that was holding on to things, whether it was a guilt, regret, whether it was other maybe not so nice emotions. And I spent time in order to be able to clear that more and more. So things consolidate more and more. And from that, a life opened up a lot more. I was showing more things psychically as to how we as souls evolve. And often we arrive here with some very set ideas from other planets that have nothing to do with Earth. And it's really about coming to understand Earth. And I think only in the last maybe 5-7 years have I begun, even less maybe, that I begun to see Earth in a whole different way. Slowly over the years, different experiences I had, because I was a person that was in my head a lot. I do a lot of things. I've done organized things and all that. And then all of a sudden I began to be aware that the energy of the earth is so important that we're not going to leave until we figure this emotional thing and appreciate the Mother Earth, which doesn't always happen overnight either. Now, I have written down here just in a sort of notes that I could think about of what to say is like a question people often ask me is, why so many people here? Well, as I touched on, people get sent here. People come here out of curiosity because wherever they've been, they may be bored or they maybe just feel it's time to move on. It's not like we go somewhere and have to stay there forever. The only thing is when we get here, until we really understand the emotionality, we seem to keep stuck here. And the more we're able to accept and acknowledge all of our feelings and understand how life works, this force that is there, I call it the universal love. Actually, I call it the divine essence, but there's many names we can use for it. When we know that that force is there and it's there for us without judgment, absolutely without judgment, then we can be free to leave if we so choose. Because when we pass over, as many of us know, there are so many different vibrations. I was having supper with a friend last night, and she said, "Oh, well, the good news is that when we pass out, when we leave this planet, which means when we die, that we're going to be." And I went, "What?" Well, it depends on your vibration. You go where your spiritual vibration is. If you're not evolved spiritually, and then I realized when I was thinking about it later, a lot of people have an altruistic viewpoint that, okay, when we both die, that's it. That is not it. Your soul is going to go to the vibration that it's at. That's why we take care of our soul. That's why we meditate. That's why we learn how to pray effectively. That's why we do all those things so that we can go here. And why there's so many of us is that we don't leave because we resist emotion, number one. Number two, we can split. Part of us could go into one life and another life. It seems like we're stuck. I know many times, how come I go back to certain memories? It's because a part of me is stuck still there. So we've got to bring all those pieces together. We've got to bring them together. We've got to come to unity within our soul level, not just our sense of being. So what is the main thing? Main thing is to have a belief of some kind of a power which is there for us, for you. Now, for me, that's a loving power and energy which supports me, and it has no judgment. It has only love. So when I'm in my head and I'm beginning to worry about things, I just take a stop. I now have the energy within me. I breathe into myself and calm myself down and really look at my thoughts, very closely at my thoughts. Because I'm like everybody else, I can get all caught up on different things and forget who I truly am. And I get into all sorts of bits and pieces. I want you to know the importance of having a philosophy of some kind. For me, that's a belief in something bigger than you, that loves you, that cares about you, that has your back, you might say. And your philosophy is a compass. It's a compass to go by. Something you can add to, you can change, but it is a base to work from, to believe in. Part of me thinks so many people today have no philosophy. I see them, they come in here. And I'm so privileged that in some ways, when I learned how to read the tarot, I began to see what these pictures were telling me from a philosophical point of view. Then I added to that as I studied along the way. Well, I thank you for listening for today. And for those that are listening on YouTube, if you really enjoy these talks or this one in particular, please hit subscribe. And if you have not already, and I really thank those that have, I appreciate that. Also, feel free to leave a comment or contact me via my website, which is normacowie.com, and let me know of topics you would like me to speak on. Now, next week, moving on from this one, actually, I'm speaking on the power of thought. And so until then, enjoy your week, be kind, and love one another. Thank you so much for being with me.